ask SWRC Robinson up to continue giving us the wonderful information about invisible Black nurses. And welcome. Please silence your cell phone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Aloha. Aloha. Thank you for coming. Feel free to move up closer. Just like students, huh? Hanging in the back. Well, again, thank you for, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for having me to speak again for you, to disseminate information on the continuing research on the invisible Black nurse. First, I'd like to thank the past Madam Supreme Bradley for supporting me in this endeavor with the phase 1 of the research in terms of accessing membership. And I would also like to thank the current Madam Supreme, Priscilla Murphy, for continuing that support in this area. And I would like to thank you for your gracious support in allowing me to share this information with you. The learning objectives, I didn't put them up there even though I'm an instructor. But the learning objective number 1 is to disseminate new information for you. And then the second is to start a dialogue, to teach you how to start a dialogue with rules of engagement. How do you engage your non-minority peers in terms of this phenomenon that you're experiencing? Let me give you a little background. This research bore out of frustration as a new graduate, as a faculty member, being Black in a predominantly white institution. And you're working in a silo most times, and not until I come to professional organizations that I begin to hear the same stories, similar stories, from those who may be in the 70s and the 80s, and we still having the same story for people in their 20s and 30s. So it's time that now we begin to look at strategies versus just talking about it among ourselves. So I want to get you to a point where you feel comfortable to present this information yourself and to start to share your stories at your respective organization in terms of rules of engagement and how to create a psychosocial healthy work environment. Feel free to ask, questions along the way. We have an hour. I usually do 45 minutes, 15 minutes for Q&A. And timekeeper, please keep me on time. I'm a little nervous, but that's okay. All right, the methodology, I use qualitative research to look at this phenomenon. And over the years, it started out just as frustration, but then it ended up being really a passion in terms of how to help current and next generation of nurses. So I did a focus group on a cohort of African-American Black nursing faculty in predominantly white institutions. That research came from the Association of Black Nursing Faculty, which I am currently affiliated with. And they completed a survey using SurveyMonkey, and they also did an online teleconference as a group and shared their experiences. And it was very powerful to hear the pain in the voices of these women who sharing their stories. Recurring themes emerge as feeling invisible. And as I continue to look at the research, I keep seeing that theme. So what I have done over the years is look at accumulation of articles, books. For example, I found this book, Fast Facts on Combating Nurse Bullying, Incivility, and Workplace Violence. What nurses need to know in a nutshell. So it is discussed, but it's not discussed from the perspective of being invisible. Based on all of my readings, I come up with the invisible Black nurse syndrome. Okay, and what is the invisible Black nurse syndrome? Well, it's the accumulation of feelings. Number one, horizontal abuse. We are abused by our peers through verbal communication, through lack of progression, and through nonverbal behavior. So that's how that teased out. I didn't use terms like violence because we're not actually being battered. No one is touching us, as far as I know, not yet. It's just more of an abusive type situation. And then another thing emerged as scrutinization. We are held to a higher standard than our peers. That's why we're smarter than our peers, because we have to go the extra mile all the time, as a staff nurse, as a charge nurse, and in academia. And the last thing in terms of syndrome was delegitimization of the professional role. We are usually viewed first by how we look, our skin tone, before being viewed as a registered nurse. Okay? Thus, the invisible black nurse syndrome. So as I go through, I'm curious to know if you feel that syndrome. Have you felt scrutinized? Have you felt held to a higher standard? Have you been abused? And how does that impact your physical health and psychological well-being? So a couple of surveys, questions I use. Can you describe your feelings? And what strategies have you used? Because it's not enough for us to get here and talk about it and in our respective groups, but now how can we disseminate this abroad? What strategies have you used? What strategies would you like to share for the next generation or even current nurses who are experiencing this type of behavior? New terms are being used, such as bullying, incivility. Our latest term I read was relational aggression. I said, oh, that sounds good. But there's no term that talked about racial bullying among nurses. What enabled you to be resilient? Most of the respondents talked about their faith. They just relied on their faith to get them through. They used a lot of scriptures, and only a few resorted to alcohol or non-productive strategies, a small amount. And there was a few who wanted to, lash out, but for the most part, it was faith-based strategies like that. Here are just some narrative accounts I would like to share with you. And these are from recordings on that online research. Most of the time, there's nobody that looks like you. I've generally been the first, and the majority race usually doesn't have as much education as you do, or experience. Can you relate to that? Yes. And they can't stand that you come in with all these good ideas. Can you relate to that? Yes. Or that you can turn stuff around quick, and they've been there for 20 years and haven't been able to turn it around. I think I heard someone speak about that earlier, how quick we could go into a situation to make change. Because all they have to do is spread a lie on you. And the culture here is that you won't progress because they told a lie on you. Have anyone experienced that?
Yes. Yes.
I've been told that also by my own. And what is not discussed is the horizontal abuse that we experience from each other. Okay? And so my response to her was that, excuse me, we're not sisters. So I'm reporting this as I heard it through the passion in their voices. Participant was laughing during this time. And she said, they just like the other young lady here on the phone. A few of my majority race sisters have seen what others have done to me too. And they didn't like it. They didn't understand it. I'm thinking that you really can't address that without addressing the culture as a whole. And what we're talking about is the nursing culture. The nursing culture professes to be a caring, loving, compassionate profession. Is that true? Have you received that caring and compassion from your peers? So we need to work on that. My mission and goal is to stop the bullying. Historically, they call it eating our young. Well, it has gone beyond eating our young. I mean, they're chewing us up, putting us in the garbage disposal. I mean, it's really bad. And we have to help the young nurses navigate through that. That's important because with the new generation, they're different than what we are in terms of tolerance. They might not have a strong faith base, and there's a potential that they could resort to violence in the workplace if you look at our society. So I'm very cognizant of that. Have you experienced this when they make statements right in front of you? And you're right there? Or if you have an accent?
Yes.
That's not cool. They already categorize you. A physician saying they didn't care at all what you said that way. One of the things that forced me to do this, as a new nurse, I was taking care of a patient, and I kept telling the doctor, hey, I'm the nurse here. And he kept talking to the white nurse. Gave the white nurse the order. She didn't write it down, but I'm in earshot. When he left, my peer came over to give me the order. Thinking, you can't give me an order. You can't give me an order. So I told her, you need to write it in a chart. She did not. So the patient got transferred to rehab with the PICC line in place. Doctor came back irate, totally irate. Where's the nurse? Where is the nurse? Here's the nurse right here. So he proceeded to berate me, and I don't respond to physicians who berate me. I just be quiet till I hear common sense or some normalcy. So luckily, because of how I chart, there was no order, there was no verbal order, so they had to go back to the white nurse, and she the one got in trouble. But it goes to show you how you're invisible, while you still being visible there. Being told that they would be under a microscope. And these are women from across the country who did this. Have you felt like you was under a microscope? Somebody's always reporting on you? Have you been assumed as a housekeeper?
Yes.
CNA?
Yes.
I have had recently, my supervisor picked up my name tag and proceeded to pull it out and say, just because you have these credentials doesn't mean you can implement them. I say, oh, okay, as I'm thinking with the cloud, as you trying to get your PhD and you can't even get through your accounts. Okay? So I'm trying to make this humorous, okay? And that's from another lady from out the state, but yet I just experienced that recently. Always questioning your credentials. Students call me Mrs. Robinson. So I've learned to say, Mrs. Robinson has left the building. Dr. Robinson is here. What helped us get through? Again, a lot of faith-based scriptures. I want you to reflect on what got you through during this time. How many of you guys are still experiencing something like this? Okay. How many ignore the situation? Thinking it'll go away? I used to ignore the situation. When you look at my head, for example, you may think I might have cancer. You might think I have a little alopecia, or you might think it's a fashion statement. I don't have cancer. I have a little bit of alopecia in the family, a little bit of hormonal imbalance, you know. but a whole lot of stress. So as I thought I was handling my stress, as my blood pressure went up, before I came here, it went up to 210 over, it was like 210 over 170. Holding and stuff. Yeah, so it does have physical effects on you. Think about the physical effects it has on you. Have your blood pressure went up at all? Have you become anxious? So I share that because, again, this is what can happen on the outside as you don't handle your stress. So that's part of my reason to help you deal with that. We have to begin to talk about it in a safe environment. I'm going to give you some tips from Stephen Covey, work that he's done on how to create a trusting environment. So we're going to have personal and professional stresses, but it all depends on how we relate to it, right? We can have the impetus come in, but we don't have to respond to it. So I want you to learn how to respond to it assertively and not keep it in. Not go home and call everybody and then have your pressure go up, or worse, when it comes to that. This is a depiction of us, of what we go through. We have role stress, we have role strain, and we have role conflict. Role stress, because in our role as a nurse, we take care of patients, we're trying to be focused, but yet we have to also pay attention to our peers who's trying to undermine us.
Yes.
Okay. From that, it goes to role strain. I got a 12-hour shift, a 10-hour shift. Could be a little stressful. And then a conflict is, okay, I'm in America. I've done what we're supposed to do. I went to school, stay out of trouble. I'm a registered nurse, but you still don't view me as a registered nurse. So I would encourage you guys to start introducing yourself as a registered nurse, not just a nurse, because everybody is a nurse. So we have to try to remember to do that. Now, I thought I might get into trouble with this one. I shared it with some of my colleagues. And at work, I wanted to present this PowerPoint, and I sent it to my supervisor. I'm still waiting on approval to present it. But I was able to present it to two colleagues, and you'll see their responses later in terms of this. So I got this from Beyonce with her Lemonade song. So it says, "Dear Susie with the straight hair." And hopefully this isn't offensive to anyone if we have any, hopefully it's just not offensive, but it's our truth. This is what I want you to know as a Black African American colleague. This is what I need to get off my heart. I have value. I have value. Are you able to go back and tell your peers you have value? I am empathetic. I am compassionate. I want you to look through the eyes of diversity. We learn about cultural diversity, cultural inclusion, but you need to start practicing it with me. It doesn't become such a black-white picture, but what I want you guys to understand, it goes beyond black and white now. There's a lot of reverse discrimination with white peers, with Filipino nurses, and other nurses from other ethnicities. So it's getting blown out of proportion. And my vision would be that we as an organization, or just as a body of Black nurses, can make that change, can actually be the change agent that we want to see. Think about who you're going to take care of and who you're going to work with. In our nursing curriculum, we don't have a lot of discussion on cultural diversity. It's very brief, and we don't have a discussion on race at all either. So when my supervisor told me a couple of months ago that I couldn't talk about African American. First, she said I couldn't talk about sickle cell anemia. Oh, okay, well, it's in the learning objectives. Because she couldn't read sickle cell anemia, it wasn't in the learning objectives, but it was cushioned under blood respiratory. It was in the readings. And then she proceeded to say, and don't speak about African American health issues. It's like, really? Oh, I had to take a pause. I had to take a pause. And yes, I went through the chain, and nobody believed me. She actually put it in print, but I didn't realize that people can remove emails and things of that nature. But can you imagine, with the health disparities that we have with our black population, to be told not to even discuss it in the curriculum? So that was quite interesting. Yeah, I'll come back to her. I'll come back to her. No, I'll tell you now, that was our conversation. I was livid. I wanted to just go on TV and say, hey, by the way, do you know? But what I did, through some of these strategies that I'm gonna share with you, I was able to have a care confrontation with her. You might wonder, what is a care confrontation? It's a confrontation where you're in control and you're going in there and speaking from the heart. You're not going to be the angry black woman, as we're always accused of being when we're trying to be assertive when it comes to that. And the communication ended up really interesting because I was able to look at her in the face along with HR, because I refused to be in the room with her alone. And I looked her, eye contact, and said, you know, and she's from the South, so I just went all the way back because I'm from the South. I said, you know, I appreciate your candor. And she was very surprised. I appreciate your honesty. Because again, we have to use a little salt to soften the conversation, and we can control it. I say, but I need to share something with you. I'm using all my therapeutic as a psych nurse. I'd like to share something with you. I do not believe you're racist. Her expression. I say, but your behavior reflects racist attitudes. It's like, God, are you telling me something? Really? Is this coming out of my mouth? The shy person? But I was able to have that care confrontation by making her feel safe in a safe environment, and we could continue. And I could actually tell her behavior, my perception, and things of that nature. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. And she says, now we're best buddies, that we turn the page. I said, okay, whatever page that is, that's fine. So she approved me to come to this conference. For last year, to show you how horizontal abuse, I had another speaking engagement through Walden. I worked for Walden part-time. And I did a presentation on creating a psychosocial healthy online environment. And a student complained that, again, talked about African American health issues. So she decided I couldn't go to the conference. Yet, I'm already published to be there. And she didn't care. So that really hurt me. I'm thinking, like, what, do I lose my full-time job? What do I do? My credibility? Of course, I fought for it and I got it. But this time around, she approved it before I even submitted it. Oh, your vacation will be approved. So it's really good to have that care confrontation and to make these people feel at ease. Because by our training, we are assertive. Is that right? Yes. And some of our personalities are assertive, maybe aggressive, that we need to roll it in. So I want you to start thinking about some self-reflection on how do we contribute to that behavior. That's another hard conversation that we need to consider. So you read this, right? Okay. Basically, we do the same homework, we take the same tests. I need to be valued by you. And those are the characteristics of a bully that has been identified. Not being addressed by my degree, accomplishments. I remember being at a table and we had a new person being interviewed, and we give them lunch. So my colleague went around the table and introduced everybody, Dr. A, Dr. B, Dr. C, she came to me, this is Zora, Dr. so-and-so and so-and-so. So, okay, interesting that way. Being invisible while you're present. How do we create a psychosocial healthy work environment for us to keep ourselves healthy? What are the rules of engagement? The workshops, some of the recommendations that was given by the nurses, that we need to have more workshops on racial inclusion, because race is not mentioned in the literature. It's ethnicity, it's any other word but race. Workshops, curriculum change that include racism as a core component of competence. How do we help our peers talk to us and speak to us? Disseminating research, how to mentor minority nurses. How many of you guys have had a mentor? Awesome. How many have not? Well, our goal also is to mentor each other, one nurse at a time. My personal mission is to inspire, motivate, and educate one nurse at a time to get through. Creating a safe environment for disclosure. Kobe talks about building trust, having trust talk, but it has to start with you as a person. You have to have organizational trust. So if you're working in an organization that you know is not set up for trust, that might be a little difficult, but you can do it at your own individual level, nurse by nurse. Social trust. How many of you guys hang out with your non-Black peers? How many ask you to functions? A few. Everybody's hands should be up, but you see they're not when it comes to that. Start with yourself. For example, I had a look that was intimidating if I'm not smiling. And it looked something like, okay, I want you to separate the person from the behavior. See this look? Is that a welcoming look? Intimidating? Well, one day as I'm washing my hands, taking care of a client, I happened to glance up at the mirror. I said, "Oh, what the world? Is that me?" Because I could see my reflection and it was very bland. I see my face every day when I wash it. But I saw a different perspective of how other people may see me. So I had to work on my affect to make it more of what you see now in terms of engaging. Are you intimidated by me? Like this? Versus. So I had to learn, maybe I was contributing to the discourse just through my nonverbals when it comes to that. So let's start with ourselves. A lot of us probably, a few of us have that personality where we're going to go right to direct confrontation. You have to be careful with that. You can easily be terminated. Or they could be so scared where they call security and walk you out. So you just have to be mindful. And again, being in an organization and remembering our mission statement, that should help you a lot too. In terms of before you act, just stop and think, how is that going to impact you? And then the environment around you, and any organization that you belong to. Now this is a slide I inserted based on my peers when I shared with them the PowerPoint. And I use care confrontation with them too because they're interesting. And they indicated that one was a Middle Eastern. She looks white, and she embraced her Middle Eastern. And she's perceived as white, and she says sometimes she's discriminated against because when she tells them she's Middle Eastern, they don't believe it. The other one was white, and she's a dear friend. That's what she calls me, a dear friend. But yet she embarrassed me in front of the students all the time. You know, that way. You got the wrong shoes on. Dr. Robinson is out of dress code, this and that, yelling at me in front of students. It's like, okay, that's fine. That's fine, let's keep it moving. So again, care confrontation, I was able to do the workaround and then get the information that I needed. So they suggested for my black colleagues, this is what we should do. Do icebreakers. Do we have time to do icebreakers? When we're on the floor working and we have our caseload. Create an environment of trust. That we can do, and we can work on that environment of trust. Some suggest to go ahead and do an initial assessment on bias, ignorance, stereotyping, and making assumptions. The question becomes, can we do that? Can we give a tool to our peers to check this out? No, we can't. But that's their suggestions. And the value of this research is not just from our point of view, because we're all on the same page when it comes to our experiences. But what about those other folks? Getting them on the same page. And they talked about making assumptions. How many have been guilty of making assumptions? So we have to work on that. Even though sometimes assumptions are right when it comes to certain people. Then have an open dialogue. That was hard for me to do, again, because it can have negative consequences. But we have to be open with how we perceive in the communication that we're getting from others. And that's the main thing. The communication is key. Is key. Where do we go from here? Where do we go from here? What strategy will you take back? And what are your rules of engagement? Do you have boundaries with your peers? Do you have boundaries? For example, I don't tell my peers to call me Dr. Robinson. I'm Aura. But what I hear is, oh, Dr. Robinson. Oh, Dr. Robinson. I didn't ask you to call me that. I'm Aura. So again, invisible while being present. Learning outcomes. A lot of prayer. A lot of self-reflection. I had to learn how to do a lot of forgiving through this journey over the years. And I encourage you to forgive those who come against you. Pray for them. It really works. It really works. Because that's all we got sometimes. Or how do you feel, how do you be so calm? I said, Jesus. Okay. That's what I can say. We have an exodus from nursing. We have young folks that's not coming into nursing because of all the things they hear. And we have a major nursing shortage. Is that right? So we have to figure out how to overcome that. Even amongst ourselves, guys, we're not at liberty to be at each other when it comes to in-kind type of horizontal abuse. We need to learn how to help each other and pull each other up. My role as a leader has been through a few people who have mentored me along the way. One of them is Ms. Barbara Napper, and reading a lot of books on leadership and looking at non-leaders who are bad leaders to make sure I don't repeat that type of behavior. We have to do our own health promotion strategies, guys, in terms of proper nutrition. Have you been eating proper nutrition since you've been in Honolulu? We have to have a balance of work and play. We're good at taking care of others, but when was the last time you took care of yourself? I want you to reflect on that. When is the last time you took care of yourself? When is the last time you said no to somebody? So you could just have 30 minutes of peace and quiet. Okay. First time I said no at work, it was 2:30, and I leave at 3:15. My colleague asked me to give a medication. I said no. I didn't have to give no excuse. I leave at 3:15, no mandatory overtime. And we have a float nurse to take care of that. Needless to say, when I came over, she was very upset with me. And she went into this raving. And I asked her, well, are you upset with me because I told you no yesterday about patient, administering medication? Yes. I said, but we have a float nurse. That was not my role to do. The time it takes you to make an assessment in the middle of narcotic count, I would be over. But because of that situation, guess what I did? Flipped it into my master's thesis. So any adversity, I try to flip it into something positive. Get into an exercise routine. How many of us exercise? Awesome. And it doesn't have to be in a gym. It's something called a sidewalk. That's free, okay? Your house, you have walls. You have to do that in order to keep your sanity sometimes, because as a psych nurse, it's a thin line. It's a very thin line between being on this side and that side. I don't like orange, so I'm still over here. And then we have to be able to share with others that we trust, clergy, or even our non-minority peers. And let me premise this, it is not all. It's a few bad apples that's making it bad for everybody on both sides. So please remember that. I should have caveated that, it's not all. But the literature still is talking about bullying in nursing, and we have a higher percentage of it affecting us when it comes to this. Transforming professional nursing in the 21st century. We could add race as a curriculum thread to be able to have these open discussions, these open forums. Lead workshops on racial bullying. Start the dialogue. What are rules of engagement? Rules of engagement is knowing yourself first. Going in there with a caring heart, not to win the fight. We had a soror one time told us, you need to, when you go into a battle, you already need to know the outcome. Okay? So go in there with a caring attitude. I am working on the Invisible Black Nurse book. I'm actually typing it. I actually got the outline. And it's very hard to write. It's a very hard piece because it's so real and it's so raw. And you cannot come across as an angry person. When people read the work that I do, I want you to be inspired and motivated to make change. I want it to be uplifting to you when it comes to that. And this is what is not on the PowerPoint I want to share with you. I believe I have like 15 minutes. Okay. There's types of good communication, right? You're effective, you're interpersonal, and you're therapeutic. How many of you guys are using therapeutic communication? What are you other guys using when you communicate? Are you culturally sensitive? Sometimes you have to add that little salt to make that conversation start. We're going to be interacting with folks with different education levels, so we need to make sure that we talk at their level of understanding. And everybody who's a nurse is not really everybody who is a nurse does not have the same level of education. and the level of cultural sensitivity that is needed to have this conversation. I want you to think about, how do you do rapport building at your place of employment? How do you do rapport building with your sphere of influence? And how do you begin to be accepting? You know, people have a right to be ugly, you know? They have a right to be ugly, but you do not have a right to respond to that ugliness. Does that make sense? You are in control. We need to remember that each one of us was uniquely created by a creator. And we all have different values and priorities. That makes sense? We have customs, we have different, upbringing and background. So we need to start taking that into consideration. Now when I look at those folks, when they come at me, I smile. So what do I need to say? Will it uplift them, or will it tear them down? And how will it make me feel? So I always use uplifting terms that edify, rather than bring down a person. How do you facilitate rapport? How are you interacting with your students? Do you bring the same personality at home to work? Is that a possibility? Again, we have to look at ourselves in terms of how do we contribute to the communication. I used to initially think, I don't have to look at myself, they're doing it to me. But even if a car, if you're at a stop sign and a car hits you, do you know you're at a % fault? Anyway? So even in our communication, it's all about perception. So now I try to slow down, think about what I'm gonna say, how they're gonna respond to it, so I'm not appearing as an angry black woman or defensive. And then empathy, I want you to portray empathy for when those come at you. Be empathetic. You're in a sorority, some of you guys are Christians who have a faith base, and just take some time to take a deep breath and pause. God, how do you want me to handle this? Or is this something you need to handle? And let me tell you, he handles pretty much if you just back off and let him handle it. And what I'm noticing too, sometimes when people come at you, they don't have exposure to maybe other races. And sometimes it's not even about your race, guys. It's just about a core personality. So let's make that as a caveat. What type of personality are you working with? Sometimes I have to go back to my psych book and look on the personality disorders and see where they land and do a care plan, okay? Try to understand their experience from their point of view. Like the supervisor I was telling you about, who refused my vacation, took it back, and I can't talk about African American people. I looked at it from her point of view. What lens is she looking through? And I was able to tell her, I said, I know you're under stress. I don't know what kind of stress you're under, but I know you're under stress. I've been on that side. I'm here to help you. Even when she was at me, I'm here to help you. I told you when you came here, I want your problem. You see my tone change? That way. And then do a self-assessment of your own biases. We all have biases, okay? And you have to admit those biases. For example, in class, when we talk about cultural diversity, I have a whiteboard, and I have them write out their bias, prejudice, and if they're racist, and what ethnicity they belong to, ethnic, race, and culture. And I have them all write it down. It's anonymous. And it's amazing what you see. Racism against Democrats, Republicans, and then black women. I said, oh, look like I'm in trouble here. So I always know how to integrate and bring humor to it, because I tell the students, these are the people you're going to be working with. These are your colleagues. We want you to change your mind and perspectives by giving you the education, but if you don't, that's on you when it comes to that. So far, no one has ran to the dean on me on that one. So I asked you, do you harbor any bias toward the group? So when I ask students to do something, I do it also. So I wrote down there white women, some white women, and how I was able to go through forgiveness. and realize every time I got angry at one white woman, God put another one in front of me who helped me. He always reminds me. Okay? And then any gender disabilities, we have to assess our own bias. How do you become invisible? Start talking up, being more assertive, using care confrontation, and being authentic. Being authentic with your feelings. Interventions, be present, be compassionate. I don't touch anybody anymore without asking them permission. Do I have permission to touch you? You know, if you want to give me a hug, that's fine. And then recognize them find something positive within that person. Like my supervisor, I found something positive. Even though I didn't agree with her assessment of me, I appreciate your candor and your honesty. And that broke the ice when they talk about icebreakers. And just communicating authentically. Do you have any questions? Any remarks? Was this meaningful? Yes. Did you learn something? Yes. What's your takeaway? I got 3 minutes. What's your takeaway? And usually I would be navigating the floor. What's your takeaway? What is your takeaway? What did you learn that you're going to take back?
I want to use your pausing and then look at how I'm presenting myself to do it like a self-check. See what am I doing to me? So I got this scowl. I mean, you don't got it. But you know, and I wear that. That's my natural. Got these creases, so I have to make myself mindful that okay, you know, just soften a little bit, and present how I present.
And have somebody you trust give you feedback on how you. So we don't
You can't hear you.
Oh, we don't. See, I'm talking infinite. You don't see how we look. So she was just saying she has to work on her nonverbals in terms of creases, how you're being perceived. Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yes.
My takeaway is learn techniques to deal with it because it is not going away.
All right. Now she says it's not going away. That would be the main goal, but we know that's not going to happen. But how can we minimize it in terms of having negative health effects for us? The research talks about having diabetes, hypertension, anxiety, and some go into depression. And that shouldn't be as registered nurses. I mean, we're here to take care of folks, right? So we need to have that dialogue with our peers. Thank you. Who else? What did you take away?
I liked how you said to be honest with yourself about we contribute to the idea of being like a Hebrew black woman by like our attitude and our like our flat affect. And you said another key word that I couldn't. Aggressive. Yeah. The way that we approach things, and so for me in my work, definitely that's something that I have to work on. And so it was good to say like, okay, maybe I do help them out a little bit. So I have to tone it down and find ways that I can be clear, but yet, you know, get my stuff across.
Tone it down. You can make it fun. I have a raspy voice, and nursing have taught me to be just a matter of fact. And Miss Napper. Like just, but now use my telephone voice. Hi, how are you? Good morning. Even if they don't say good morning to you, I still say good morning. Always with a smile. That way, yes.
Find something good in others.
Find something good in others. I like what you got on today. It's like, oh, really? That's really nice. I mean, we are in control of ourselves, but we change agents. We're change agents.
Yes.
We can put that little salt in there and soften it. I used to have it over my door. That's scripture, don't ask me what it is. But I would keep it over my door. Add a little seasoning to your salt with your speech.
Yes.
Let your speech be full of grace when it comes to that. Thank you. Anyone else? What is your takeaway?
saying.
Speak up.
One of Reese's 4 agreements, and one of them is how I feel about you has more to do with me than you. And so therefore, we can't take everything personally.
She was saying, we can't take everything personal, because when you step back, usually those folks got some problems going on. I have found out from experience, they may just got a diagnosis with cancer, they just lost a job or a promotion, and they lash out. And there's research on oppressive behavior, so when our in-kind do it to us, so that happens too, oppressive people oppress other people if they don't have power. And we have to realize some of our colleagues in a marital situation, they don't have power. African American women are in a unique situation by default. We are the breadwinners, we can get the jobs, we know how to change our affect, and our attitude in order to get the job done. Is that right?
Yes.
We're like chameleons. If I have to be angry, I can switch and do that. I don't like doing that, and I'm still nice and therapeutic, but I'm not smiling. Okay, when it comes to that. What's your takeaway? Yeah, if you want to share.
Yeah, well, I've always, going to work, I always have a big smile on my face. Even when the patients or coworkers are, not so nice, I constantly smile because that's what feeds my soul.
Right.
So I can't help what other people do, but I can help how I respond to it and how I act. So I just have to smile because God made me beautiful like that.
Nobody can get mad at you for smiling and being kind. Now, this was not easy. Just like wearing his hair was not easy. The giving is not easy, but it's very worthy once you learn that. And it freaks them out in terms of she's still being nice to me. The same supervisor I bought her some poinsettias for Christmas because she was there a year. And she thought administration bought it for her or purchased it. And once she found out, oh, purchased it for you, she comes in. Oh, it's you. You did this for me. I said, well, thank you. But again, soften that a little soft. I'm here at your conference. She approved me. So thank you again. I'm very humbled to speak in front of you, to have me back. And I hope I made a difference, and I hope you can take some of these tools and experiences and put them to work. And if you're interested, I'm looking for stories for a chapter in my book. I want to share your stories from generationally across the board. And I can't wait to read them.
And what we will do is we will get your information out to the attendees so that if they would like to contribute their experience, they can get that to you. Okay? So we'll definitely do that. We thank you very much. And Madam Regional Director, we just would like to thank you for your presentation, and we have a presentation for you. So if you wouldn't mind stepping back a little bit.
Okay, thank you.